Welcome to Moving People Forward with Mark Elfstrand. This program is a series of conversations on commonly seen challenges in everyday people's lives. We hope you'll be inspired by the stories you hear today. Perhaps you know of someone who would also benefit. Be sure to share the program link with a friend. Now, here's Mark.
When a young girl or woman learns she is pregnant, there is often internal conflict about what to do next. With an unexpected pregnancy, abortion may seem like the best option, an action that can't be undone. This describes a crisis pregnancy, a potentially serious problem, perhaps because of, desertion by the birth father, a lack of support from the parents, financial problems, and so forth. So what to do? Well, most importantly, get answers and get help. With me today on Moving People Forward are two special friends from the Caring Network, a crisis pregnancy ministry with 6 locations around Chicagoland. And a special welcome to Kirt Wiggins and Barbara Singer. Good to have you with us today.
Nice to see you, Mark.
Yeah, good to see you.
Explain each of your roles with this organization.
I'm President Emerita. For 20 years, I served as president, and now I'm in a more of a supportive role, just continuing to further relationships that we have built. Next year is our 40th year, so continuing to do that great work.
Can't walk away, though, can you?
It's a passion.
Yeah, okay.
Yep.
Kirt, how about you?
Yeah, so I'm a pastor, started Pathway Community Church in Elmhurst almost 15 years ago.
Yeah.
And about 6 years ago, developed a partnership with Caring Network through Barb, and just had God's leading to get more involved in this fight for life in the area, and especially in Illinois. And so through that partnership, we started a center out of our church. And then I ended up getting asked to be on the board a couple years ago. And then this past year, we had our president has brain tumor, diagnosed last summer with a brain tumor, very serious situation. And so stepped in January then to serve as interim president. So that's kind of how I got into this role.
Let me ask you, in your role as a pastor, as you well know, within the church, there doesn't seem to be a unified voice on this issue. How do you approach that?
Well, I can't speak for other pastors on this because they're all leading their churches and what's the most important thing. But you're right. It has been, I've noticed that this seems like a no-brainer. Churches and pastors ought to be able to step up to the plate and say, hey, this is a critical issue in Illinois. We need to be standing for life, and here's a way our church can get involved. And Caring Network's one way. But I don't know why that pastors don't lead their churches to be stronger participants in this fight for life. It just seems like this is one area that we could all rally together around. So even today, I'd like to invite pastors to take a step, get involved, and check out Caring Network if you're interested.
Very good. Okay, so let's talk about what the status is in terms of abortion in the state of Illinois. I don't know if you ever see what's going on around you in Wisconsin or Indiana, but let's just talk about Illinois here. Yep. What's going on?
Well, certainly we've seen a great momentous change in what has happened in the last year here with the passage of SB 25 last summer. So we've had this new law for a year. Illinois has the most radical abortion laws in the country. So we've overturned 40 years of abortion law. And so we have abortion now. Partial birth abortion is legal in Illinois up until the moment of birth. There's virtually no restriction on abortion. There's no health regulations on these abortion facilities at all. And so we have a great concern for the women's well-being and health, even beyond an abortion, in terms of just keeping them safe because there's no health inspections in these facilities. Certainly, even before this law was passed, we saw a 76% increase in out-of-state abortions here. So women are coming from the surrounding states into Illinois. So with the passage of this new law, we really have become, in Illinois, a Midwest late-term abortion destination.
So when you use the term radical, we have the most radical. Are we talking about primarily late-term abortions by that phrase?
Well, it certainly allows for late-term abortion.
Right.
There's no restriction whatsoever.
Yeah,
And so,
right. I mean, it's just, I mean, it's almost like anything goes in Illinois for abortion, whereas there other states have more restrictions around it and what
Right.
you can and can't do. And Illinois really is just opened it wide up, especially after last summer and the law being passed. And so that's why this is such a critical situation, and we need all hands on deck to be able to stand against it.
The
mhm.
justification that is often given as for why we should keep these facilities open and why is this an important thing, it's because of the life of the mother and the life of the or a child that there's something
Mm.
maybe amiss in the process. Respond to that.
You're talking about the centers that are trying to have
Justify
abortions.
that, yeah, why they do them.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I mean, they're making up these lies to try to justify an abortion. These organizations like a Planned Parenthood, and it's just they're flat out lies about they're trying to convince that this is what's going to be best for the woman, and she has some, and so it's just deceiving the woman into thinking that it's her own choice and the baby's not a life. It's not. It's just a fetus, and those are lies. I mean, it's a way that the enemy is trying to deceive our culture and deceive women in particular that are pregnant to not have their baby. And so they take different tactics. I mean, yeah, there's different ways that they try to go about that and getting them in there. But really, it's flat out underneath. It's just the enemy trying to deceive and meeting women at these vulnerable points, because women are found in tough situations. They're in a financial difficulty. Maybe they're not married, maybe, or they're don't have the financial resources, or they already have children and trying to have, and so they meet them at that vulnerable point and try to prey on them in a sense to get them to have an abortion. And it's like, it's just so heartbreaking. And that's why we're doing what we do at Caring Network, to try to change that culture and to change the state of Illinois.
Do you think that most women, when they think about an abortion, have really any true concept in what happens in partial birth abortion?
It's probably unlikely. Most of the women that come in to see us are in a crisis, and we find ourselves educating them, giving them what the medical community calls informed consent. The abortion facilities will not do this on this procedure, and so we find ourselves in a place of educating women on what their choices really mean and what will happen. By and large, when they go to an abortion facility, they really are being sold an abortion. They're being sold a procedure,
Mm.
and there's a financial incentive, obviously, in the for the abortionist. And for us, we don't charge anything, and we have the women's best interest at heart.
Mm.
And so we're in a position of being her true advocate and educating her on all the pros and cons of the choices before her. And I think that's why we see the
Mm.
number two way that women come to us is by referral. Even if they go ahead and choose abortion after coming to us, which is possible, they have great loyalty to us and will refer a friend because of how they're treated.
Yeah,
And
there's a woman I just was reminded recently, Jenny, who was she had 2 kids. She found out she's pregnant, and she's like, "I'm not sure I can do this." And she was thinking of getting the abortion pill, which you can take a pill now
Right,
and do this.
right.
And so she contacted us to find out information about this abortion pill. And our counselor set up an appointment with her, scheduled an ultrasound for her to come in, so that she comes in. They have a great talk about God, and that she does believe in God. And she's like, if I have an abortion, I'm not sure I could even live with myself. Well, she ends up having an ultrasound, seeing a picture of the baby, and she was fearful because she's like, I'm not sure I can have more children. But once she saw that picture, because that picture changes things, and saw the picture of this baby, and she decides to keep the baby. And it was just really a great situation, and the counselor was able to help her and continue to walk with her in that process. So that's just one example of how it works.
All right. Well, we're going to take a time out here, a short break, and then we're going to continue our discussion here in just a moment with Kirt Wiggins and Barbara Singer from the Caring Network. More coming up in just a moment.
God is our safe place and our strength. He is always our help when we are in trouble. This word of God in Psalm 46:1 says it all. God is our safe place. He is our strength. He is our help when we are in trouble. Whenever and wherever we are invited, nationally or internationally, Lutheran Church Charity's mission is to bring the mercy, compassion, presence, and proclamation of Jesus Christ to those who are suffering and in need. LCC is a ministry of presence, to be present with Jesus, to lift up people in times of joy and sorrow, in prayer, and by passing through donations of dollar per dollar to those in need. Through our canine ministries, we respond and deploy with boots on the ground and paws within 24 hours, often sooner, of any crisis or disaster situation we're invited into. Our LCC disaster response teams continue our support, both financially and with our dedicated volunteers, for those communities during their long-term recovery and efforts, which can be years. Disaster response teams also train volunteers through our alert training to equip volunteers to respond to the various types of disasters. LCC's human care ministries work through our churches and pastors to provide financial and in-kind donations, people resources, and emotional and spiritual care. We have strong partnerships with churches and Christian ministries across the U.S. and internationally. You see, for us, the bottom line is making a difference by being present. For people who are suffering and in need, with that mercy, compassion, presence of Jesus Christ. Thank you again for allowing us the privilege to stand alongside and serve others. Jesus and your partnership make that possible to touch thousands of lives.
This is Moving People Forward. I'm Mark Elfstrand, and we're discussing how a crisis pregnancy can actually have a profoundly good solution. Well, my guests are Kirt Wiggins and Barbara Singer from the Caring Network. How much pressure does a woman often receive to have an abortion?
It can be very great. The women that come in and are in a very great state of despair, and they're very frightened, especially during this pandemic, we are finding.
Really?
Yes, much, much, much more.
Is it because of the monetary issues of raising a child? What is it?
It seems like it's just a combination of factors, right? I mean, because there's fear already in the culture because of COVID, and then now with the racism, what's going on in our country, and then just it's been just very fascinating to watch what's happened. At the same time, we've continued to see women during COVID. We worked remotely, so instead of coming into our centers, they've had to make appointments. But we've seen women, our counselors have talked with them, but they've been able to talk longer because it's a remote conversation. They have more time, it seems like, to talk. And we've actually seen 10% more of the women coming in choosing life during this time, which has also been fascinating.
Yeah. Okay, so a woman who is in this crisis pregnancy mode hears that there's this place called the Caring Network. Doesn't know what it is, shows up to see you. What actually transpires when she arrives?
Yeah, I mean, before she comes in, I mean, let's say, she could walk in and
Okay.
just that's fine, or she could call the hotline that we have and just check, make an appointment that way. But either way, if she walks in or calls, makes an appointment ahead of time, she's going to be just warmly greeted by a receptionist, somebody that's there at one of our centers. We have 6 centers across DuPage County, and she'll come into one of those centers, be warmly greeted. They'll welcome her. They'll find out some information about her, and then find out where she's at in the process. And then she'll meet with one of our counselors. And we have trained counselors that just do a fantastic job of just meeting women where they're at and walking with them through the process, trying to understand their situation, caring for them. Probably take a pregnancy test to just confirm if she's pregnant or not. I mean, most of the time they know that coming in, but just to confirm that. And then, spend quite a bit of time with her, sometimes even with, there's a boyfriend involved or, somebody else that comes with them. Sometimes they don't, they come alone. And then, after they talk for a bit, find out their situation, answer questions they have, encourage them, try to set up an ultrasound if possible that day to see that baby right then. And I mentioned earlier, that's just the really key part, to see the baby that the woman's carrying. That there's nothing more powerful than seeing the life of the baby inside the mother. That changes the situation.
Okay, now do you charge for these services that you provide?
No, we do not.
All right, but now we still have a problem here because the woman is pregnant. She decides perhaps not to go and have the abortion, but now she's got another responsibility. She's going to have to raise that child, and those economic pressures are still going to be upon her, and maybe she doesn't have the resources, and all this is kind of still weighing on her mind. What does the Caring Network do to help past the point of just keeping that abortion?
Yes. Well, I think that's a big issue, and that's something that we address head on with ongoing services and help. And it really starts with that great relationship that has been built with that counselor and the entire counseling team. And so support continues. They really, when that woman comes in and she is in just a state of panic, they really do a triage. They find out what is causing this, what are the main issues, and let's address these issues, financial, relational, whatever it is. They put things in place to really create a safety net and a help around her.
Caring net.
Yeah. Are there medical people at all involved in the process when you're doing this? I mean,
Yep.
that's a little awkward. I mean, if they don't,
Yeah.
is there a doctor or a nurse I'm talking to about?
Yeah, so we have a doctor that oversees our 6 centers.
Okay.
And then we have at each, we have nurse sonographers. They're medical professionals that are trained in sonography, being able to perform the ultrasounds, and they've gone through extensive training to be able to do this. And so we have medical professionals that are on staff that are involved in this ministry and serving. I mean, they feel strongly about this, and they're sacrificing to be at Caring Network, but they are doing a fantastic job serving women.
Okay.
They're medical missionaries,
Oh,
really.
Yeah.
So the number of people that you see, how many of them actually say, thanks, but no thanks? What do you have any? You must have records of the percentages. of this.
It changes all the time.
Does it?
Yes, it does. We look at this and we can see the difference.
What's the influence to cause that?
Well, I mean, there's different factors that, just for example, I mentioned during COVID, the numbers increased.
Yes.
Right. So we're trying to understand more about that. Does it have to do with the remote counseling? What's
Right.
behind that? But, there's also different type of women that will come in. Some are very strongly abortion minded. Like they come in, they are set on having an abortion. At the other end of the spectrum, there are women that are, let's say they're in a tough situation economically, but they're from the outset planning to keep the baby, right? So you can imagine somebody like that comes in, they're already planning to keep the baby, they just have some financial difficulties. Well, they're much more inclined to say yes to having the baby versus a woman that comes in, I'm going to have an abortion, and then ends up choosing to have the baby and chooses life. And so, the percentages on that, are what we're most interested in, of how many women that are strongly abortion minded and are going to choose life.
Do a lot of the women say, let me ask you this, if I decide to have the baby, I mean, what are the alternatives? Because I can't afford to take care of this child. Do you get into adoption issues?
We do.
Counsel and
We do. Our team is very well schooled in adoption and how to make that happen. And we have great relationships with the Christian adoption agencies.
I see.
And so we see that on a regular basis.
All right. So what's your hope in terms of influencing the change in the state of Illinois?
We want to put Planned Parenthood out of business. I mean, we want to see the tide turn in Illinois, that there are no more abortions in this state. So it's a huge task, right?
Yeah, you don't have
it's
a political climate that favors you,
right?
do you?
No, and we're not a political organization in that regard. That's not our
Right,
focus. Our
right.
focus is on reaching more women and saving more lives. That's what we're about. And so we have a big task in front of us, but we know we have a big God who's helping us.
So, Barbara, you've been at this for a long time.
23 years.
Yeah. What got you started in that?
Really, it was God's call on my life. It wasn't something that I was looking for, but God, through a series of events, which He orchestrated, brought me in contact with the organization, and they really recruited me.
Okay, so in all the time that the Caring Network has been going, I mean, what's your best guess at how many babies' lives have been saved?
We were just talking about this the other day. Barb was with the organization 20 years as president, and estimate, what we say, Barb, 10,000?
About 10,000 during that tenure.
Yeah, and so maybe, let's say, the other 20, if it's another 10,000, we don't know exactly, but, tens of thousands have been saved through the almost 40 years of the ministry, which is just such an encouragement to think of all the lives that are now on the earth because of that.
Yeah, I don't imagine you probably have had much experience with this, but there maybe some of those babies that were saved 15, 20 years later, 20, could come back and just, thank you for helping my mom decide.
Well, in fact, we see them. I see them.
Do you?
Yes,
Okay.
my husband and I started attending a church, and lo and behold, there was one of the moms, and her son was driving. He was driving his first car, and she came up to me and said, "Do you remember me?" That's back when the ministry was smaller, and I
Yeah.
was doing counseling at that point. And here's this young man who's now driving his first car.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really, and
That's
you
a
see
sweet
that.
moment, right?
Yeah, that's fantastic.
You see that all the time.
Yeah.
Well, we need to wrap up, but before we do, for people who would see this or maybe are passing it along to a friend or to hear it as a podcast, how do they connect with you?
Well, our website's caringnetwork.com.
Right. If they're not in Illinois, does that matter?
No, you can see it anywhere in the world. Go to caringnetwork.com. That's thanks to the World Wide Web, right?
Yeah.
But they can check us out on our website. There's ways to get in touch with us there. If they have questions, if they want to give, if they want to support this ministry, caringnetwork.com.
Okay, very good. Well, Kirt Wiggins and Barbara, thank you so much for being with us.
A pleasure.
Thank you, Mark.
And it's good to see you again.
Yeah, you too, Mark.
And I'm thankful for all the work that you've done over the
Praise
years
God.
to help life.
It's an honor.
And that's going to wrap up our program for today. As the sages have told us, grow in wisdom, think humbly of yourself, and love one another. And may it be so with you. Join me next time for more of Moving People Forward. I'm Mark Elfstrand.